Welcome to day number 1. We are going to need 2 pieces of equipment for today. First, we are going to need the ball, whatever ball that we've got. And next, we are going to need our elastic resistance band. The lower the resistance, the better. So for our very first exercise today, what I want you to do is to take off any shoes or slippers or anything you've got on your feet that's relatively supportive, because we're going to work on the bottom of our feet using a ball. So you can kick those off now and just move them off to the side, just out of the way. So one of the reasons that we work on the bottom of our feet is because our feet are the main contact point for balance. And one of the things that makes it difficult for people getting in and out of a chair is actually that we have to shift our balance quite a bit. So our brain uses the information coming from the bottom of our feet really heavily as far as telling us where we are in our environment. So our feet tell us what's going on the floor, and they're a big part of the feedback to our brain, telling us where we are in space and whether or not balance is safe. So one of the things that we can do to actually improve that is just to slowly loosen off our feet and give a lot of feedback to the bottom of our feet. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this when it comes to giving input into the bottom of the feet. The most basic way, simply to use a ball, and we're going to roll around on the bottom of our feet. So for today, everything that I'm doing, try to go relatively light. It's not about trying to really move a lot of stuff around in there. It's more about trying to get just some input into the bottom of your feet in a way that they're not used to getting input, and doing it gently so that your brain can pick up all the information coming from the bottom of your feet, so that in future days, as we start doing a little more standing up, it's going to have better information to work with. So start by taking the ball. You can just put it right on the floor between your feet in front of your chair. So let's start with the left foot. We're just going to put the arch of our foot right on top of the ball. So the ball's right in the middle of our foot. And from here, all we're going to do is we're just going to slowly roll straight front to back. So you can cover most of the bottom of your foot, all the way from the ball of your foot, which is kind of the knuckles at the base of your toes, all the way to your heel. If you've had heel spurs or plantar fasciitis, then I'd probably prefer you don't go right onto the bone of your heel, that you stay just in front of that. And that's just because if you have heel spurs or something, that's usually where the issue is. So for the most part, just stay in the middle, kind of the big meaty part on the bottom of your foot. And you don't have to put a lot of pressure in. If it feels good, you can put a little more in if you want. So after we've done this, we're going to take the ball, we're going to move it out to the side just a little bit, and then we're going to let our knee dip in a tiny little bit, so our foot will be just outside of our knee. And that's because we want to get the kind of inside of the arch of our foot. So on the big toe side of our foot, the ball is going to come up a little bit more towards the inside of our ankle. In there, we're going to roll in there. For most people, this is going to be a little bit more tender, and that's just because there's a specific bone in there that's tender on almost everyone. It doesn't mean that you've got a problem in there. It just means that it's going to be a little more uncomfortable to work. Good. So once you've done maybe 20 or 30 seconds in there, we're going to bring it back towards the middle again. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put our heel, we're going to put the ball of our foot right on top of the ball. We're going to put our heel on the floor behind it, and then we're going to take our foot and we're going to move it back and forth like a windshield wiper, just ever so slightly like that. So the ball should roll back and forth underneath the ball of your foot, back and forth and through here. And the goal is to try to get all of these bones to kind of articulate past each other a little bit. So this is not meant to work as one big bone. They're all meant to kind of slide just like the knuckles in your hand do. Okay? So you're going to put the ball right underneath that part of your foot, put your heel on the floor, leave your heel where it is, and move your toes back and forth. So the foot is relatively complex compared to most other parts of our body. It's just got a lot of bones, a lot of joints, and it does a lot of different functions. So working on our feet is always just a really high return activity. It's going to give you a lot of bang for your buck when it comes to balance, when it comes to strength, and just when it comes to feeling better. All right, let's switch feet. We're going to go over to the right foot now and start just like we did on the other side, just in the middle of our foot, and we're going to roll straight front to back. So at no point do I want you to be pushing so hard in here that it causes you pain. It might be a little bit uncomfortable, but it shouldn't ever feel like a sharp pain or like it's going to cause you to limp afterwards. So you're just rolling front to back in there for a little bit. Then we're going to take the ball, we're going to move it outward just a little bit, and we're going to lean away from the ball, let our knee dip in a little bit because we're going to roll the arch of our foot a little bit more. So after we've done the arch of our foot, we can bring the ball back in towards the middle a little, put the ball on the floor underneath the ball of our foot, drop our heel behind it, and again we're going to swivel our toes back and forth just to get all those different knuckles at the base of our toes articulating past each other. Good. So that's all we need the ball for today. So for most people, doing a little bit of work on the bottom of your feet almost every day will do wonders as far as your balance goes. It'll usually help to relieve a little bit of the strain on the bottom of your feet as well. A lot of people will find this feels really good if they do it first thing in the morning and last thing before they go to bed at night. And one of the reasons being, it's just going to help to get your feet ready for the day and improve your balance before you go. And at the end of the day, it'll help to massage out all the tired muscles in the bottom of your feet and just help them to relax before you go to bed. So I'd encourage you to just get a ball, leave it near your bed, and then just have it available for our exercises as well. For our next exercise, we are going to need our elastic resistance band. So we're going to be using the band to work primarily on our hip muscles. So our hip muscles don't do a lot for us when we're sitting down, but as soon as we go to stand up, they stabilize our low back and our pelvis and control where our pelvis goes, especially as soon as we get into a single leg stance, such as a scissored stance in walking. Anything where we're not even side by side, our hips have to control our legs in space quite a bit. So having strong hips is really important when it comes to balance, especially as soon as we start actually walking. Once we get out of our chair, start moving, that's when it becomes important. So we're going to take the band, going to spread it out side to side like this. So your feet are probably going to be just under your knees in front of you, something like this. You're going to take the band, you're going to pass it underneath your legs, pull it up in behind your knees, and then you're going to pass it like this. So you create this little X, then you can put that down there. So from here, all we're going to do is we're going to spread the band, hold for a second, and then come back. So for most people, this is going to work the muscles on the outside of the hip. You might get a little bit on the back or on the front of your hip as well. It's entirely fine. There's a lot of muscles that contribute to this kind of movement. So just make sure that you're using primarily your hips. I don't want you twisting in much through your spine. I just want your feet on the floor. You're going to rock over towards the pinky toe side of your feet, and your knees are going to spread apart, and you're going to come back again. So we're going to do 10 of those, and I want you to do them slow, and I want you to pause at the end and control on the way back in. If you find it a little too hard, you can ease the band off a little bit. And if you find it a little too easy, you can pull the band much tighter, whichever one is going to be appropriate for you to get approximately 10 reps. Okay? Let's do 10 of those right now. Good. There's 10 reps for today. So you can slowly ease off on the band before we take it off. And we are done with the band for today. So we have one more exercise that I want to do before we start getting into the actual standing up aspects. And this is going to be something for our spine. So a lot of the time, one of the things that happens over time is our spine gets used to loading in a very specific way, meaning it gets used to being flexed forward or flexed back or off to one side. And most of us, as a result, we have a really strong preference to be one leg forward versus the other leg forward. So this exercise is just meant to even that out by taking your spine and just moving it kind of side to side a little bit. So we call these surfers because what we're going to do is we're going to stay seated, but we're going to have arms out to the side as if we were balancing on a surfboard, and we are going to actually shift all the way off to one side and then all the way off to the other side. So what should happen is your pelvis, you want it to stay generally glued to the chair. If you lift a little bit, that's fine, but you want your pelvis to stay kind of central onto the chair. Then above that, your rib cage is going to move a little bit to one side and a little bit to the other side. So the goal is not to flex off to one side or bend off to one side. The goal is actually to shift. So if your pelvis was here and your rib cage was here, what should happen is your rib cage goes that way and goes this way. It's not this kind of movement, okay? It's It's a very small movement, especially for stiff spines. It's not going to be a very large one at the beginning, but all we want is that little shift this way and a little shift that way. And a lot of the time it helps to kind of visualize your ribs doing this. The easiest way to do it is surfers. So we're going to act like we're reaching with a hand. Keep your pelvis, your butt right on the chair, and you're going to reach that way. You're going to look back towards the other hand, and you're going to reach that way. And for some people, their hips will get a little uncomfortable doing this, so feel free to arrange your feet however you need. A lot of people having their feet kind of facing each other and their knees out is one of the ways that will feel the most comfortable, but it's going to be different person to person. So we're going to do 10 of these total. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 10. Okay? So get into your chair, get into a nice upright position, have your hands straight up to the side, and we're going to do 10 reps starting now. I've just got 2 more. Good, and we've done 10 of them. So that exercise tends to get a lot easier as you do more of it. It'll tend to loosen off quite a bit. So a lot of people, what they're going to feel is a little bit of tightness in the low back as we go through that. That's entirely normal. It's usually just a matter of the muscles in your low back having to loosen off a little bit to allow that movement. So it takes some time, but it does get a little bit easier, and you'll find you shift a little further as we go. Our next exercise is going to be really the basis of this entire course, and that's going to be going from a sitting position to a standing position. So we're going to start with the most basic and easy version of this today, and we're going to progress through different variations towards the end of the week. So if you have a chair with armrests, one of the easiest things to do is to use the armrest, but they've got to be solid, they've got to be really supportive. Most armrests are not designed for you to put your weight into or press into. They're actually just designed to hold the weight of your arms as you're seated. They're not meant to put your full body weight into. So please be careful if you're using armrests for this. If you shove your full body weight into some of them, they can lose their integrity, they can move, they can bend, they can break off. So I'd strongly prefer that you use your own body weight instead. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to scoot towards the front of our chair. The easiest thing to do is to get your sit bones, those hard bones that you sit on, as close to the edge of your chair as you're comfortable doing so that you're not going to fall, but you're still very close to the front. Then you're going to try to get your feet tucked in underneath you. So this is going to be a little different feeling depending on how high your chair is and depending on how tall you are. For really tall people in a really low chair, this is actually a difficult position. And for really short people in a tall chair, it's also a difficult position. But generally speaking, you're going to get towards the front of your chair. You're going to have your toes and your heels tucked in underneath you, and then you're going to have hands on your lap. They can be here. You can do it on the chair, or you can do it on the lap. With me, I actually have no chair to hold on to, so I can't push off of my chair. If you have chair to push off to, feel free to do that. So what we're going to do is from this position, we're going to lean forward, and we call this nose over toes. So your nose should go past your toes, and then when you get here, you're going to press into your thighs, and you're going to do it close to your knees. If you press back towards your hips, it's actually you're kind of pressing your own pelvis down into the chair. So what we want is to have our hands out towards our knees, bring our nose past our toes, and then as we get out towards the front, we simply go up like that. So for most people, what we want is to actually have our hips come up before the rest of our body. We don't want to come perfectly upright because the balance is a little bit harder. So we're going to do the exact same thing in reverse here, in that we're going to run our hands down, almost like we're bending over, until our hands hit the top of our knees. Then we're going to keep our nose over our toes, keep pressed into our thighs right above our knees, and slowly sit right back down. And then we can come back. So the easiest way to do this for a lot of people is off their chair, but a lot of the time the thighs are going to be a little easier because they move with you. So we don't want to push here if possible. We want to push further forward, and the way to do that is usually to lean into it. So we want to get our center of mass over top of our feet. We want to get our nose past our toes and slide our hands out to be right in the middle of that. So we're going to do something like this. Edge of our chair, pull our feet in, slide our hands out towards the edge of our knees, put our nose past our toes, press into our thighs, push our hips straight up in the air, and then come nice and upright. We're going to do the same thing in reverse. Slide our hands down our thighs by scooting our butt backwards till our hands are on top of our knees. Support ourselves nicely on top of our thighs and slowly lower our butt down and back. And then we sit backwards. Okay? So the main important point, the big thing that you need to remember is you bring your feet in, you need to lean forward. If you don't lean forward, it takes a lot of strength to just stand straight up. So getting yourself hinged forward through your hips so your butt is back and your face is forward, that's the important step here. So what I want you to do now is I want you to do 5 slow repetitions of this, where you're going to bring your feet in, hands forward, nose over toes, press into your thighs, and stand up. Then you're going to do the same thing in reverse. Slide your hands down your thighs, press, and then down again. So just do 5 slow repetitions of that one, starting right now. And don't worry too much about the pace. If you go fast, that's fine. If you go slow, that's also fine. Just try to get 5 in total. And as we go, I'm sure a lot of you are like me. Your knees are making some funny sounds. Your ankles might even make some funny sounds. That's entirely normal. The clicking and popping is something we do not worry about. Let's do one more rep here. Good. All right, let's relax. We're in our chair for the rest of today. So that exercise is kind of the basis of how we go from a sitting position to a standing position. For a lot of people, even if they never do any of the different or slightly more advanced versions, as long as you can get good at that, it's going to be really easy for you. So for a lot of people, being able to get towards the front of their chair is going to be great to get them out of their chair. But getting back into it, it feels a little bit sketchy and a little bit unbalanced when you're towards the front of your chair. So if you have a chair like I do that you can actually be back and you can put your feet underneath the chair a little bit, it's going to be much easier on the way down. So anytime you go to sit down, if at all possible, turn around and get your feet tucked back underneath the chair a little bit on your way down. The whole thing will feel a lot easier. The very last thing that we're going to do for day number 1 is going to be an exercise called leg lifts. And it's meant to work on the hip flexors in the front of our hips and the quad muscles on the front of our thighs. And these are just some of the big muscles that help to support us when we're going from a sitting to a standing position and the other way around. So we're going to do some really quick and easy exercises for these. So first thing I want you to do is to get towards the front of your chair. You're going to have legs bent at 90 degrees. And all we're going to do is this. We're going to slide one leg out so that it's straight. Pull our toes up towards the ceiling, lift, and come straight back down like that. So same thing on the other side. You're going to slowly straighten your leg all the way out, pull your toes up towards the ceiling, lift your leg up, and then do the same in reverse. Okay? So we're going to do 10 total repetitions of that. We're just going to alternate side to side, a rep on our right, a rep on our left, and so on. So by the time you've done this, you'll have done 10, 5 per leg. Feel free to go at your own pace. If you go a little faster than me, feel free to do more than 10. If you're going a little slower than me, do less. It's entirely fine. I'll aim for 10. Okay? So get to the front of your chair, get into an upright position, and let's start with the right leg. I've just got one more per side here. Good. And that is it. We've done all 10, and that's the end of day number 1. So as we go out through the week, we're probably going to find things get ever so slightly more difficult as a challenge. If at any point I'm giving you an exercise you find a little bit too challenging, feel free to pick one of the exercises from today and do it instead. I'll see you tomorrow for day number 2.